Hi, it's Jay from Iridescent Tarot, back with some more sparkle for you. So today I wanted to do a VR to Kim at the Somatic Sorceress. She made a new tag called #Idealized Self Decks, and per my usual, I am responding weeks later, but that's it's just the way that it is these days. But I really liked the idea of this tag, which is talking about the aspirations that we have for our tarot selves. So the questions, she posed 4 questions, and the first one is Idealized Self Tarot. Tarot decks that you thought were for you, but were for your idealized self, and why. I'm going to start out with a caveat that there are a couple decks here that I think I will be moving along, but there are also decks that I have this like internal push and pull with that I want to keep in my collection to expand my knowledge, or that I'm purposely keeping in for study. But even so, those can be somewhat like of an idealized self for me. So I'm going to start here with the Herbcrafters tarot because I have a lot of like thoughts and feelings around this deck in particular. So if I think back to my experience with Herbcrafters tarot, it's a deck that I've known about for a decent while now, and in my head this is like Shanna, sincerely Shanna D's deck. Like I know that this is her I don't know if she'd call it this, but like her soul deck. Like this is a deck that she has loved for many years, and so when I look at this deck, like I think of Shanna. It's really not one that I had wanted to bring into my collection. I don't like this card. This is this is actually my least favorite card in the whole deck. It just does not, like, it doesn't make sense. Why? I don't know. Chariot, this, no. But I hadn't taken my desire for this deck seriously until I was watching specific videos, walkthroughs on this deck, and really understood the concept behind what they were doing, why it's called Herbcrafters tarot. Because each of the cards has its own herb that's associated with the tarot card, and then it talks to you about how to craft with that herb or how to utilize that herb. I really like when there's a really strong tie-in between whatever's shown on the card, the tarot card meaning, and then like steps forward as to how you can integrate that into your life. I'm all about that. I'm not a kitchen witch or kitchen practitioner or any of those things. I don't really work with herbs all that often. Yeah, I do some run-of-the-mill drinking of tea. I like loose leaf teas, and it's not like a huge part of my life. And I thought that maybe it would be nice to have a deck that incorporates some of those herbs that I know less about so that I can learn about them through the book, etc. And I do think that this deck is great for that. And one of the things I also really like about it is that there are no people. The most that you get are some hands here in the court cards. And I think that the art style is really cool. It's a art deck that's made from, I believe, colored pencil drawings. And so when you first look at this, like before I purchased it, I couldn't really tell from walkthroughs and stuff like how beautiful the art was, because it just kind of looked like a photograph. But the artwork, the colored pencil drawings are so well done and skillfully done that they like could be photographs. I believe that the 2 creators, it was written by Letitia Guthrie, and then the artwork is by Joanna Powell Colbert. And I believe that one of them like set up these scenes, took pictures of it, and then, Joanna would then translate those photographs into artwork, I think was kind of how the process went. So there are many things that I like about this deck. But the idealized self me, the reason that this is being chosen for this tag specifically is because there is a tarot YouTuber that hasn't made videos in a while. Their name is A Rosebud Cauldron, and they have so many videos about Herbcrafters, in-depth walkthroughs and discussions and talking about the cards. And that tarot tuber worked with this deck for a full year. I'm pretty sure that they didn't work with any other deck during that year, or like even if they did, it was minimal. And when I think back to the recent hashtag that many of us did, Sapling Tarot, on having a deck collection video, I and some other people who responded talked about this idealized self, that we wish that we could be the person that just had one deck that they brought in their bag and banged around, and this is the deck that's mine, and 30 years later it's going to be tattered and the cards are going to be like half the size that they started because it's been in so many places, and like when we pass on, like our families will know that that was our deck, and like have it be an heirloom that gets passed on through generations. Like there's this whole idealized self thing that is attached to having either a minimal size deck collection or just one singular tarot deck. And so when I saw a Rosebud Cauldron, like that honed in on this specific deck, I was like, wow, I need to experience that. And so I bought the deck. And I think just right out of the box, I knew that I was going to have some trouble with the cardstock. So this is US Games, which I haven't had the best of luck with their cardstock. And it's just pretty firm of a shuffle. Like the cards aren't super bendy and they are slightly oversized. So compared to standard tarot, they're just slightly larger. And the edges are like really sharp. So what I did was I sat with a nail file and I like filed both sides of all four sides of every card in this deck. And then I went and edged it with this like silver sparkly color. And actually what I also did was I kind of like bent the cards, like I kind of massaged them to kind of break up the fibers inside to make them softer. And so what that created was like a little bit of wear that now some of those problems have resolved. Like the edges are so not sharp. They're very enjoyable to hold actually. And the bendiness when I go to shuffle, it's bendier than it was, but it's still not like the best at riffle shuffling. Like it's pretty good, but it's not super enjoyable in that regard. And it's still oversized. And I had thought about cutting them down because, I don't know, I just don't want to trim decks if I don't have to. And now that I did all this work on the edges, like I'm definitely not going to trim it, but maybe if I had started from scratch, just this white border doesn't help the situation. Like I really probably should have trimmed the white border off, seen where that got me on the front, did my thing with the edges after that point. But now that I've done all that work on it already, I'm not going to go back and trim it now. All that to say, I think I have a hard time when there's any kind of physical, tactile sensation with a deck that hinders my connection with a deck. I have a hard time getting over it. And most of the time it's due to oversized cards. After seeing a Rosebud Cauldron's intense connection and ability to work with this one singular deck for so long, I just had to experience it for myself. And I don't think that this deck is ever going to be that for me. There are other decks in my collection that I do think that I could get to that point with. Like if you ask me right now in this moment, I think maybe Majestic Earth Tarot or Playful Heart Tarot. And then more recent acquisitions would be something like the Future Ancestors Tarot. Like I got that in the last few months and I have such a strong connection with it that I could see that happening. But this deck, I don't see that happening for me. Does that mean that I want to get rid of it? No, I think that, like I said, there's so many things in the guidebook that I would love to really absorb. And I can do so just by working with this deck in a normal, casual way. It doesn't have to be like the deck for me. But I did buy this with this idealized self in mind. And so it definitely is my most like aspirational self. Like this would be my aspirational self in a way that only has one tarot deck, which is not going to be me, I don't think. Yeah. My other Idealized Self Tarot deck, this Spirit Keepers Tarot. The question that I want to ask myself when I think about this deck is, at what point do you think that you're going to have enough time to truly give these books justice? Like, when? Benebell Wen put so much into this deck. And I want to read through this and extract what I can from it. I also know that there is so much that for me to feel like I had the time and the space to do that appropriately, that like there would need to be nothing else serious going on in my life. Like this is a PhD level course in tarot that I just don't have the time or the wherewithal to dedicate to it like anytime soon. And I brought this deck in knowing that that was going to be the case. I purchased it knowing this is a future me, idealized self me tarot study for down the road. Who knows? 30 years down the road? I have no idea when, but I know that it's for when I can truly set aside like ample time to dedicate to this deck. There have been other decks that I've had that do have as not quite as much like assistant material to go along with them, but have as much intense thought and esoteric knowledge behind them, like maybe the Telos Tarot. And I did end up rehoming that because I just knew that I was never going to get to it. And for me, if I'm going to start looking into that kind of stuff, this is the deck that I want to do it with. And I don't need to have this deck plus any other like super esoteric decks sitting on my docket. So this is the one, this is the deck that I have, you know, sitting there waiting for me to have the time to go through and learn. I know that there is the little white book. Like, I know I could just kind of do a shortcut and work with this deck just using this, but that's not what I want to do. I tried doing a reading with this deck and the little white book, and do you know what this deck gave me? It spat in my face. It was like, no, out of 4 cards, I'm going to give you the Devil, the Tower, the 10 of Swords, and Death. And you're never going to pick me up again until you come at me with the respect I deserve. And I said, okay, I won't do it. I will put you back in your box and I will wait until I can truly spend that time with you. So this is an idealized self that has way more free time than current day self has. And I'm okay with that. But I'm not okay with having more than one like this because then it becomes, to me, it's overwhelming. And I'm just happy having this one. Okay, so for the curious, we've got nail polish today is Lurid Lacquer, swapping Barbie heads and bodies. This is like a typical 90s pink with like a nice purpley blue shift. This is one of my favorite types of colors. And for perfume today, I'm wearing Nocturne Alchemy Bastet's Ice Cream Apricot Cream. This has notes of ice cream, apricot peel, apricot stone oil, jackfruit cream, Tongan vanilla beans left in oil to age. This is so freaking delicious. I love this. It's super, super creamy. There's no other like peachy apricot-y type scent that I have ever found that has beat this scent for me, but it's one of those hard to find, you know, out of stock indie perfumes. But this is super creamy and delicious and I love it. All right, the next prompt is Idealized Self Oracle. Oracle decks that you thought were for you, but were for your idealized self and why. So sometimes there are decks that are just like, I don't know, cult classics that people really, really love. And the Iris Tarot is one that's been around for so many years. I think it's been like since 2016 maybe. And it should have been like a little flag to me that like if I didn't have this deck by now, there was probably like a reason for that. And I know that's not always true, but I think with this deck, for me, that it should have been like a little bit of a flag to self, a note to self. Cassie from A Riffle in Time and I share a really similar A, taste in deck, and then B, way that we seem to work with decks. And when she is really, really emphatically into a deck, I'm like, most of the time, it's going to be something that I'm going to end up liking. See Reclaim Oracle, Future Ancestors Tarot, etc. So I got this because it has just been long enough that like many decks get lost to the sands of time and, you know, have their heyday for a very short period of time and then never to be seen again. And this is a deck that's been around for a long time and really has never left the tarot tube sphere. And so I felt like I just wanted to give it its fair shake. And it's just not for me. Like, Idealized Self wants to really like decks that have super rudimentary art. Sometimes I do, but this style with this kind of colored pencil, I just don't think is for me. The few colored pencil decks that I've had, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't seem to super connect with. So maybe it's just the medium, but I just found when I was pulling these cards and reading in the guidebook, like nothing was actually hitting me like in the way that I want an Oracle deck to hit me. And so when Kim was responding to this prompt and she pulled out Iris Oracle, I was like, yeah, that that was the first deck that popped into my mind too. So I think that, you know, Idealized Self wants to be able to have this instant connection with all of the cult classics and the favorites, but it's just not going to happen. Same goes for me and Death Doula. I don't seem to get along with a lot of decks that have just one keyword, and the ones that I do have that have one keyword, I really, really love. See, Reclaim again. It's like, if it has the one word, I want that word to be something that I can take and run with, like Spread Crafters, right? Or Spread Machine. I don't need a ton of decks that have one keyword on them, or, you know, very short phrasing, I guess. The thing that is great about this deck is the guidebook and the different practices that are in it, but the way that the guidebook is set up, it prevents me from like easily getting to the page that I need. So like, if you look up the card and you're, okay, I pulled Solitude, and then I look it up and I read this one sentence and it's like, see the Hermit on page 38. So now I'm flipping to 38. Like, I know it's a small thing, but it does like throw me out of the reading when I'm like flipping through a guidebook when I should be contemplating whatever it is on the card. And I just don't think that I'm able to get over it. So this deck seems to have been such a pivotal and important deck for so many people, and my Idealized Self really wanted to like this deck and to feel that super deep connection with it and feel like it's an integral part of my practice and that I can't live without it. But it's just very heavy and intense, and is, like I've said this before, I don't see myself just like pulling one of these cards on a random Tuesday. And that's how I use my decks. I use them like very casually, sitting on the couch, using my ottoman as the reading space. And I don't think that this is the kind of deck that is amenable to like the way that I'm casually using my deck. So anyways, I thought also that I would be able to get over this like large size, and not being able to shuffle is pretty much a deal breaker to me. So having to stretch my hands out this far, it ain't it. Prompt number 3, Idealized Self Practice. Deck practices you thought would work for you, but didn't, and why. This is one of them, but I'll start with last year's, which is the envelope practice. So this is where you pull cards, however many that you want ahead of time. You put them in an envelope, you seal it up, and then as each month comes to pass, you open them up, and that's your message. I really wanted to enjoy that practice, but I just found that I couldn't keep up timing wise. Like, at first it was going to be the beginning of the month that I was going to open these envelopes. And then I was like, I don't like how then it turns it into kind of a predictive thing, because I don't really read predictively. So let me open them halfway through the month. And then, okay, I'm like, set my alarm on my phone to remember to open them halfway through the month. And then I'd like, it's like sleeping your alarm, like, oh, I'll get to it. And then I would never get to it. And so then the end of the month is there, and I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll open March and April. Like, it just wasn't for me. And I think there's a lot of people out there that love the envelope practice, and I wish that I could be one of those people. My idealized self wants to be able to be on the ball, opening these envelopes when they're due and get something out of it, but I just didn't. And it's sad because I got these nice little envelopes, and I got the seals, and I like decorated the front of the envelopes, and I had fun picking the the cards and putting them into each month, it just, when push came to shove, actually opening them was just not, I was unable to stick to it. It's such a fun like idea to do that my idealized self really wants to do that. And then Cantagy. I really like Laura Zespan's artwork. She's got that non-peoply people thing going on, that loose watercolor style. It's a little bit eerie. It's nature-based. And so I thought that this was going to be like a knockout hit for me. And I liked that the phrasing was like a little bit off the beaten path. Like, what does the wounded harpy eagle mean? Wingless, you fall into the sea. Like, they're very wide open. Your feet are two fish. I think my favorite one is what the worms know. But ultimately, when it came time to actually reading the guidebook, I wasn't finding that I was able to extract anything super deep for myself. And it's not that the writing wasn't good, like it is beautiful writing and the artwork's beautiful. And so there's like a lot about this that I enjoy, but the practice of pulling one of these every week and then gaining something that I could actually then bring into my everyday life, like there was something that was getting lost in translation about that. And so this was another idealized self where I wanted to be able to keep up with a weekly practice, and I didn't. The last prompt is Idealized Self Conclusions. So some of the questions that are posed are: who is your idealized self? What have you learned from exploring decks and practices that turned out to be aspirational versus integral? And I'm just going to flip through the Future Ancestors Tarot while I chat out some of those questions. I don't think it's wrong to have an idealized self where there are things that I want to work on or things that I want to improve or learn about. Like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with, and I'm not saying that the question is posed in a way that's like, why shouldn't you be aspirational? Like, that's not what I'm saying at all. But like, I like having an aspirational self, that, you know, version of me that's like me, but like a little bit of a stretch of like, how can I improve this or work on this or self-help this? I like having that goal to reach towards. And I think naturally in having that, there are going to be practices and decks and things that I try that are going to fall short, that aren't going to resonate, that I'm going to try for a little bit of time and be like, not for me, or that I'm going to try and I'm going to be like, yes, this is exactly what I needed for my aspirational self to thrive. And it's very difficult to know before getting decks in hand or before trying the practice what things, like which ones are going to be the ones that hit right like that, or the ones that are going to be like, I'm better off without. And so it's all part of the fun for me to be trying out these things, to be constantly evolving my practice, to have a deck collection that is kind of like a revolving door where, yes, there are a core group of decks that stay because they've hit those marks, and then the rest of them being kind of in flux of whether they're coming or going or staying or not, in relation to the things that I'm doing with them. And that's all part of the joy and the fun of tarot for me. And that's why I think it's really fun to think about that idealized self that has the one deck. But in reality, I don't think that even that is my idealized self, because I don't think that would be enough variety and fun and exploration and trial and error for me. And so my idealized self is the self that I'm bringing to tarot right now, the way that I'm doing tarot now, because anything other than that just also has its own downfalls that we don't tend to think about until we're in it, we're trying it, we're using things that way. There are some decks that I pull out of the box and it's like a zing where I'm like, wow, this is exactly what I was hoping it would be. This is going to do exactly what I hope that it does. And I've had that recently, like I said, by recently, last 6 months or however long, but with this deck, with the Lilliford Tarot, with the Dirt Gems Oracle, like there's this handful of decks where, I get them in and I'm like instant soul connection, and I wouldn't trade that feeling for having one singular deck. I think I super connect with. So thanks, Kim, for posing these really thought-provoking, aspirational self questions. I really, really liked looking at my decks in this way and talking about it, watching everybody else's responses. It's been super fun seeing the VRs that come out to this. So it's always fun here in TarotTube. If you liked this video, please like, comment, subscribe, all the things, and I will talk to you later. Signing out.